Yes, of course. Jocelyn Travis. I am on the league board of state board, and I'm excited very much about working with everyone around voting. You know, it's just we have to make such an impact this year. So I'm excited about sharing with you. I'm actually currently working for the Sierra Club as a manager, and voting is my passion. It's something I've done all my life, and so thanks so much for having me, Jen.
And at the very end, we'll be hearing from Peggy Berry. Would you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Peggy Berry, as some people like to call me Dr. Peggy. I'm a registered nurse. I'm a certified occupational health nurse specialist. And I also helped write the frequently asked questions for pandemic preparedness for OSHA's website back in 2007.
Wow.
So I'm pretty much up to date with what's going on now, and that's why I'm here. I'm also on the board of the League of Women Voters of Greater Dayton area, as well as do some outreach as a lobbyist when we get over this voting on environmental issues. I'm also a Sierra Club member. So Jocelyn, nice to see you too.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then Alice, and if we have any other staff or interns, if you would quickly introduce yourselves.
Yes, ma'am.
Just name and title.
Hi, my name's Alice. I'm the administrative assistant. This is being recorded, so you guys are all gonna look good.
Good. Do we have Ava or anyone else on yet from our team?
Ava is here. I am the high school intern. I cannot yet vote, but I love voting, so yeah.
So glad to have you. Any other LWVO team members?
Hey Jen, it's Sherry. I'm here.
Okay, Sherry, our development director, also on the board of the Kent League, is here. So great. All right, let's go. So first slide, Jocelyn is up.
Thanks, Jen. I guess I should also mention I'm voter services chair. So that's really important. So the first slide, we're talking about who can register to vote, who can vote.
So Alice, can you forward the slide? There we go. Good.
Thanks, Alice.
Okay,
so when you're filling out your registration forms.
Hang on one second. If you can please mute Tori McMillan. I think we're hearing something in your background. Others, please mute.
Thanks, Jen. At the top of your form, it says, are you a U.S. citizen? If a person is not a citizen, just let them know they're not eligible to vote. You know, that's just the main thing. Other than that, you must be a resident 30 days before the election. If you'll be turning 18 by election day, which is really great because a lot of young people don't realize that they can vote in the primary at 17, as long as they'll be 18 by election day. And that's the group that we really need to reach out to, really, those turning 18 and of course 18 to 25-year-olds. That's a core group that we need to reach for this upcoming election and all elections. If you're not currently serving time for a felony, so that means if you're not incarcerated for a felony, you can vote. And we'll talk more about that a little later. Not found incompetent by a court, not permanently barred due to election violations.
So I want to be real clear on that not found incompetent by court. The reason why that one's in there and we want to remember is that our friends who have developmental disabilities are sometimes questioned at the polls as to whether they can vote. And that's up to a court to decide. It's not up for us as advocates or poll workers. And that can be a really intimidating issue for voters with developmental disabilities.
Absolutely.
Next slide, Alice.
Thanks. So voting with a criminal background, I think this is one of the biggest myths that we have to deal with in Ohio. Many people who are formerly incarcerated think they cannot vote. And of course, in the United States, every state is different. It has a different set of laws. In some states, like Florida, you have to get your rights reinstated. In Ohio, you do not. Once you've served your time, as soon as you step out of prison, you're eligible to vote. You just have to re-register. When you go into prison, of course, all your rights have been taken away, your voting record included. So you just must re-register. And I would say, again, this is another large group of people that we need to engage. I just remember one time doing voter registration, and I was saying, you know, can I register you to vote? And a guy would looked at me really strange. He's like, you know, I can't vote. And I'm like, why can't you not vote? And he told me, you know, he had been out of prison for years. I was like, you know, you can register to vote, and I can take care of it right now. And he was so happy. I think he tried to pick me up, as big as I am. But mostly he said that he was so excited because his children could see him vote. He never knew that he had that right. And from there, he started telling his friends about it. So this is a big one for me. We've got to register people who are really incarcerated. And also, you should know that if people are in jail awaiting sentence, they have the right to vote. So they'll vote by absentee ballot. So that's another thing, you know, maybe your league might be willing to go in and get people registered who are awaiting sentence. That's a big one. Jen, I don't know if you have anything else to add about that one.
Nope, next slide.
Okay. Registering college students. As long as college, you know, I say college students should vote wherever they have the most impact, where they're allowed to vote either on their college campus or from home. You know, my thing is vote where you have the most impact. We need, I'm based in Cleveland, Cuyahoga County. That's an area we really need to have those votes. And I tell that, especially when we have our students going to, you know, maybe a rural area to college, you know, like, you know, keep your vote in Cleveland, vote by mail, you know, so, but college students are eligible as long as they've been a resident of that area 30 days before. And we should make sure we recognize financial aid is not impacted. We literally had a case where college students were told, if you vote in this area, you're gonna, and you're not from here, you're gonna lose your financial aid. So that's a form of intimidation and suppression. So, you know, so again, let's make sure our college students are registered. Let's make sure they have vote by mail applications. And of course, our vote 411 cards so they can, you know, be educated on how they're voting. And next slide, Alice. Next slide is returning your, and I'm not sure if someone is checking the chat to see if we have any questions, Jen.
I am, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Returning paper registration forms. So when you're returning someone else's forms, please do it right away, immediately. We certainly want to make a copy of the forms before we turn them in. They definitely have to be turned in by the voter registration deadline of October 5th for this general election. I would also say that it's best to get people to fill out their vote by mail application while you're registering them. When you submit the registration form, submit the vote by mail application as well, and just paper clip them together so that they're both reaching the Board of Elections at the same time. To me, it's important to make sure that, you know, while you're registering, you're also educating. And if we get that paperwork in and you do a check and let the registrar check to make sure everything is filled out completely, especially that signature. Paper registration forms, we got to be really vigilant on making sure we get them in on time.
So, and let me just say here, we'll talk about the places where forms are most likely to have mistakes. Couple things. Alice, you should be able to just have this on presentation mode so that we don't see the slides on the side, and we should be able to see that better. As you're working on that, and maybe Sherry can help because I'm going to keep answering questions at the same time to help you figure out how to do that, or Ava. College students is an interesting one to consider. So I think college students, they should register where it makes most sense for them, and they can decide if that's impact or whatever. It could also just be where they're most comfortable voting. If they want to vote in person, maybe they're registering at their college location. Of course, there's a lot of options. One thing I would just mention though, is we do not know, it should be view, I think, Alice. We do not know if college campuses are going to, we do not know if college campuses are going to close down. And so having college students request their absentee ballot and have it sent to their colleges could mean that if they go home to their parents' house, that they may not get their ballot. They can still vote, they'll just have to vote provisionally. Did Jocelyn say that registration forms should have copies made of them? We do suggest that you make copies of the registration forms just so that you can then check later to see that those were all entered into the, that all of those individuals were registered.
And Jen, if I could just add to that, also, you want to do follow-up. You want to check if
they're having trouble.
You want to make sure that they also, if they need a ride to the polls, or if they have any questions, you know, or have, you know, whatever. So by having a copy, you're able to do that, again, to do that follow-up Jen was mentioning.
Right. So again, I'm just saying, they just keep in mind, you know, this is about college students specifically. And Sherry, can you call Alice and help her maybe as we're going through this? And Alice, can you just go back to online voter registration while you're trying to figure out this? Okay, let's see. Okay, let me see here. Students, yeah, so students, when they register, they have to register where they live, their dorm room. This can be complicated for students who maybe their mailing address is in a different building than their dorm. And so what they need to do is they need to get like their living address from their college, and then they have another address that can be their mailing address, a separate address on that form. So very complicated. Don't worry about it, Alice. If we can just go to online voter registration, that's fine. And everyone will just have to go ahead and deal with the way the slides are. I know we've had a couple requests on this, but we're just gonna keep going. Okay. One of the things we need to do is online voter registration. You want to make sure, first off, this is a way that we're really promoting voter registration during COVID. Want to make sure you know how you can do that and what that website is. Note that there was a glitch in which if you had an expired driver's license, and a lot of people have expired driver's licenses right now because of COVID, initially you were not able to get registered, but now you can be. So the Secretary of State's office has fixed that. So even if you have an expired driver's license, you can go ahead and update your registration, or you can register online. There is a way to look up your voter registration, and we're going to want to do that. So registration verification is so critical, and I know a lot of you did that in the field. You may want to still do that in the field, or you may not because of COVID, and Peggy can talk about, you know, if you are having people look up on a iPad or a phone, if their voter registration is up to date, some protocols on that. Let's go to the next slide. But registration verification is so important, as you know, just to make sure that individuals have the right address and that they have not been removed from the rolls. And we will talk about being removed from the rolls here soon. But this is what happens. You will put in, you know, someone will put in their name and their information into that screen, and then this is what will come up. And then the questions that you would ask them is this correct? Is your name correct? Is your address correct? If there's no result, that means they may have been removed from the rolls, or maybe their attempt to register on paper was not successful because they left some fields undone, or someone couldn't read something. And so checking voter registration is incredibly important. Let's go to the next slide. Voter purges, I know we all know about this. Boards of elections will send someone a postcard. If you haven't voted in 2 years, you get a mailing that says you're going to get removed in 4 years. It's really, the entire process is confusing. It doesn't make a lot of sense to voters. And also 4 years can come and go, and individuals have totally forgotten about that. So make sure everyone checks your registration. As we saw last year, there were a lot of mistakes. So there are sometimes people are removed from the rolls who should not have been. They're actually regular voters. But the idea here is that if you haven't voted in a total of 6 years, you can be removed. You will know that we are going to get a new list of individuals who may, you may get a new list of individuals who could get removed from the rolls. We will be getting that from the Secretary of State. The good news is they wouldn't be removed until after the election, which means you may want to look at those names and addresses in the community when we get that list, and we'll do another training or webinar or something just on that list or all member call to help you understand that list and how to outreach to them. But the bottom line is if someone is at risk of being removed and they vote in the November election, they will not be. It is completely illegal to make copies of voter registration forms. Let's go to the next. The deadline for voter registration, which also includes updating your registration, is October 5th. So if you have moved and you fail to change your registration before the deadline, you're going to have to vote provisionally, but you should vote at your new polling location if you wait to vote on election day. Let's go to the next slide. All right, let's do some frequently asked questions. Did you want to do any of these, Jocelyn?
Yeah, but first I saw in the chat, several people did ask about expired licenses.
Right, so again, that was a glitch in the system where expired licenses, if you had an expired license, you were trying to register online, it was saying no, that you couldn't because your license was expired. That has been fixed by the Secretary of State. And we're not really going through what happens on election day today, but also poll workers will be trained to accept expired licenses as ID in the fall as well. We will do another one that's more about the nuts and bolts of voting and voting access a little bit later in the year.
Thanks, Jen. And so the question that's frequently asked about, do I have to register for every election? You know, Jen did mention that that is not the case unless you have not voted in several years. And then there's a chance your registration can be purged. But one of the things when I go out and I do voter registration, I ask people, may I register you to vote at your current address? You know, because a lot of people don't realize that they have to register whenever they move. And that's one of the big problems and one of the biggest reasons we have provisional ballots.
Okay. Hang on one second. We keep getting all these questions about copying registration. So what we're saying to you is it's completely illegal and in fact a best practice to copy registrations. If you get those to the state office, we will put those into what's called the Voter Activation Network. I know some of you are nervous about that, but let me just say what that is. It is only used for nonpartisan C3 nonprofit groups like ours and Common Cause to track voter registration, to make sure people who applied actually get on the voter rolls. The other thing it does is, so when we get this purge list from the Secretary of State, we're only going to get their name and address. So if a voter provided their phone number or their email, it allows us to follow up with individuals if they're likely to be purged. It allows us to follow up with individuals if they attempted to get registered, but they were not successful in doing so. Those copies, we can train you how to enter that into the Voter Activation Network, or we can get that done for you. Those copies are destroyed and we do not keep those. But it's new, it's a little bit new for a league to do this. It is not new though. Organizations like the NAACP have been doing this for at least 20 years because we want to make sure that we put in all this effort to register voters. We should also make sure that they really get on the rolls and that they have what they need. You can send the copy to the State League office. The original you need to drop off at your Board of Elections.
Thanks, Jen. And this public information, we need to really take advantage of those that we register because they trust us. Will I be called for jury? Maybe.
Please make sure you mute yourself, and maybe Alice, maybe just mute all of us and we'll have to unmute ourselves if we're speakers.
Yeah. So maybe you will be called for jury duty, but I look at jury duty as being like, so, you know, so.
Jermika Jackson, can you mute yourself? You're making a lot of noise. Jermika Jackson, thank you. Oh, still making noise. Alice, can you just mute everyone? And then go ahead, Jocelyn.
Yeah, no, I was really pretty much finished with that. But yes, there is a chance you can be called for jury duty, but we hope everyone is willing to do so. We need.
But also, I think the bigger point is if you have a driver's license or you pay taxes, you're also likely entered into the jury pool. So there are sometimes you'll find people who the reason they don't want to register is they don't want to get called, but they're likely to get registered anyway. I mean, they're likely to get called for jury duty potentially anyway.
Yeah, thanks, Jan. Our next slide. So we kind of already talked about students registering to vote if they have an out-of-state license, out-of-state tuition. Usually if the schools can even provide something to make sure that there's no problem at their polling location as relates to their address and that type of thing. With homeless, you know, everyone has the right to vote. And as long as there's an address where a homeless person can receive mail, yes, they should be registered and encouraged to get out and vote. It could be a shelter, it could be a friend, a relative. We just have to make sure there's an address where they can receive mail, a physical address. But again, that's another population we need to reach out to.
Probably need to pick this up a little bit. So if I moved or changed my name, do I need to re-register? Absolutely, and it's the same registration deadline of October 5th. If I didn't vote in the last election, am I still registered? Probably, but it depends on what they mean by the last election. If they mean the last presidential election, they may not be. Everyone should just go ahead and check and make sure they're still on the voter rolls, because mistakes can happen too. Who can conduct voter registration drives? Individuals, there's really no restrictions. So even, you know, for example, individuals waiting to be naturalized citizens can absolutely do that. Can we make photocopies? As we said, yes, we in fact encourage that. Let's go to the next slide. If a registration application is incomplete, can we write the missing information on the application with the consent of the applicant? You can fill out the registration form entirely except for the applicant's signature. But let's say that after the fact you're going through and you realize that someone forgot and they're not with you anymore and they forgot to click, check off that they're over 18 or that they're a citizen or whatever, you actually have to just submit the incomplete form. They have to give you verbal permission. Let's say you're trying to call them on the phone or something. They have to give you permission to check those things. You can't just do it in their absence. Do not offer anything of value in exchange for voter registration. So let's say you have a table, you can have coffee and donuts or cookies or candy, but it has to be available to anyone who walks up to the table, whether they register to vote or not. If you're only giving it to individuals who register to vote, that's actually would be considered offering something of value, and that's against the law. So please do not do that. We encourage you to highlight the required areas. I'm going to disagree with this a little bit because I suggest you also highlight the phone number. Though that's voluntary, let's keep in mind that that's the way that we get in touch with voters when there's a problem. That's the way the Board of Elections gets in touch with someone if there's a problem. That's much more efficient. But we do encourage you when you get your voter reg forms to highlight all the required areas plus phone number. Next slide. And that required area, also make sure you highlight, you might, if they are updating, you're not going to have these highlighted, but if they said they moved, you need to make sure they do their former address so that if they don't have two files on the rolls. And then we also, next slide, we also need to make sure that they date and sign it. If they forget to date it, it will be considered incomplete.
Jen, I wanted to just make a comment. Usually when I'm doing registration, I'll have a clipboard, I'll fill the information out, because when people see it and all those lines, it's a lot of work. And we know exactly what needs to be filled out. So I'll fill it out for them, make sure we use black or blue ink, then I'll let them look at it, date it, and sign it. Keep in mind, they say the average person reads on the 4th grade level. So a lot of people are intimidated by the form.
And just to be clear, we're saying we want the phone number. Yes, they will get a letter in the mail saying something was wrong with their application, their absentee application or their voter registration card. Of course they will. But if they have a phone number, that's another way that the Board of Elections or we can get in touch with them. And similarly, it's just, you know, sometimes letters don't actually come through, and we know that. And that's not us trying to beat up on the Postal Service, just sometimes that might not happen, and it's slower. So we want to make sure they have their phone number added. Let's go to common errors. These are the most common errors in order of frequency. Those check boxes at the very top, citizenship and age eligibility. Forgetting to put down their ID number, that's either on their driver's license or their social security number, forgetting to date and sign. Other errors that can be pretty common is that they need to list the county, not the country. They need to list the birth date, not today's date, or their kid's birthday, which is an easy one to do. Your voting address is where you live. It cannot be a P.O. box, but you can have a secondary mailing address, which is where you would put a P.O. box if you wanted. And please make sure that they write legibly. One of the reasons why voter reg, you know, people don't get put on the rolls is because, or they do, is that someone misread the information. So they have their birth date in wrong, or they have their address in wrong, or their name is slightly misspelled. And then that individual is going to have a problem when they get to the rolls. I mean, get to the polls. Okay, so the Board of Elections has 20 days to notify you of your precinct, your polling location, and the ID requirements for voting. So if someone says, what happens next? You can tell them that they will be hearing from the Board of Elections. And if they don't, they should check with the Board of Elections. You're gonna get questions potentially about political party enrollment. You should all know this, that doesn't happen on the voter registration form. It happens if you decide to pull a Republican, Democrat, or issues only ballot during the primary. All right, here's a really important one. And so I know we don't have very many public events, but if you are doing public events or you are out in the world, waiting for people to come to your table is not the best way to do this. You want to go to the people. So that's why we encourage you to have clipboards. That's why we encourage you to be standing maybe even in front of your tent. Of course, everyone needs to take rests. And we want you to be more direct. So rather than, would you possibly maybe someday want to register to vote, versus let me register you to vote. Or time is, or you need to register by October 5, let's get it done. Or have you moved? Or have you checked your voter registration lately? These are all better ways of opening that conversation. Let's go to the next slide. We want to definitely make your eye contact, introduce yourself. Remember that the league especially is trusted among the public. And so, you know, be wearing your button, explain that you're, also explaining that you're a volunteer is really helpful. You have a short amount of time to really get folks' attention. I'm gonna check and see. Looks like we don't have any other questions. So now we get to go to Miss Peggy Berry.
It always helps for me to unmute myself. Okay. We know that COVID is going to be with us for a while. There is no vaccine, maybe not until June of next year. we also know that it is spread throughout the United States. Now, there's 3 things that I want to make really important. Wash your hands, cover your sneezes and coughs, and wear a mask. Next slide. Okay, I put together a little policy and procedure that you can get from Jen, or you can email me and I'll send it. It will tell you the supplies that you need to keep yourself safe while registering voters. Supplies are real easy. Antiseptic wipes, gloves, trash bag, and alcohol sanitizer. Next slide, please. You're going to wash your hands prior to leaving your house. Place your face mask on prior to leaving the vehicle to register voters. Set up your workspace. If you have a table, wash everything down. Clean it up. Make sure your ink pens are all clean with antiseptic wipes, whether you're working inside or out. Discard the antiseptic wipes, then the gloves in the trash can, and then use the alcohol-based hand sanitizer to wipe off your hands. Next slide. Wear your gloves when you clean the work area, just to keep yourself safe and not have the alcohol on your hands itself. Not gonna keep going through this. Wear your gloves, remove your gloves into the trash can, and use your alcohol-based hand rub prior to entering the car to remove the mask. Next slide. So you stay safe, stay healthy, make sure you sneeze and cough. When you help, make sure you wear your mask to get people registered. And this isn't everything, but
go back to the last slide. So Peggy, I'm not sure you've got wash, maintain, avoid, cover, stay, refrain, practice. So maybe we should just go through each of those.
Okay, wash your hands frequently. When you wash your hands, it's a 20-second wash with soap and water. I like to do Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star when I do that. You know, it's a really good way to wash your hands. Maintain your distance. About 6 feet away usually, but with your mask on, you can get a little bit closer. Hopefully everybody else has a mask on. Avoid touching your face. I'm real good. I like to rub my nose. I like to scratch. When you're out there in public, make sure that, and that's the one good thing about masks, is that when you put them on, it reminds you not to touch your face. Cover your mouth when you sneeze or cough. This was stuff that we were taught as kids. Maybe our kids needed to be taught this too. Cover with sneezes and coughs. And if you're sick, stay home and refrain from going out. I can't even see this.
Yeah, that says refrain from smoking. Yeah.
Okay, refrain from smoking. Actually, if I'm gonna tell you smoking, especially, what are those things called? The new
vape. Yeah, the vape.
Yeah, vaping makes you even more susceptible to the virus. And then just practice good hand washing and avoiding unnecessary touching.
And social distancing.
And social distancing. But,
all right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Peggy. That's great. So it's all common sense, but these are the things. So every time a pen is used, we sanitize it afterwards. What do you think about this idea of people wanting to check their registration? In the past, we've had volunteers go out with their phones or with their iPads and have people kind of log in to check their registration. Do you think instead we should walk people into how to do it, or should we just pass it back and forth?
Well, you should walk people how to do that. And I would stand behind them to go through it as they work either with your phone or whatever. But I would carry a sanitizer with me to sanitize the surface afterwards. That's always good to do. I get these free things all the time from Subaru because and just spray it down and wipe it down. And you can carry a cloth with you, or use a tissue.
Okay, that's great. I mean, another option might be if you don't want to pass your items back and forth, you could tell them the website, you could have the website in, printed out really nice and big, and they could pull it up and you could walk them through doing it on their own phone potentially.
And another thing you can do is message the website to them. Why don't you give me your phone number? I'll message that site to you. So all you have to do is click on it and you now have it.
Yep, that's great. So we got a couple questions on this. Checking voter registration is really because of the purges, and because we have such high provisional ballot counts, because people forget to update their addresses. This is a best practice, I think. So yeah, I think handing them a card with the website, texting them the website. Vicki is saying she likes to walk people through how to check it so that they can help others. I think that's great. But yeah, also if it's someone who's not very tech savvy, or they really, maybe they forgot their reading glasses or whatever, you can ask for their information and enter it for them on your computer, phone, iPad, tablet.
There's another thing with that. If they're coughing or sneezing, I think Frank said they shouldn't be there. Actually, my husband coughs and sneezes all the time because of allergies. So just keep that in mind, okay?
Good. All right. What questions do you have, everyone, about just general voter registration, general voting access or rules for various populations, or about public health safety? This is, you can go ahead and unmute yourself, or you can type it into the chat. Has anyone been out in the field? Wow, I don't know what that was. Did someone have a question? Does someone want to explain? They've been out in the field and they've been doing this? And how it's been going? How do we address concerns about the U.S. Postal Service and mailing ballots? Yep. So we'll get to that one first. I think this is great. We got a couple of good questions. Where do you drop off forms? You drop off the forms to the Board of Elections. So that's one. Are there rules about voter registration, table drives, public parks, sidewalks? Yeah, so you can't set up tables necessarily in public parks and sidewalks, or you might be asked to move that. You can talk to your park district, or if there's an event, you should ask if you can do that. But anyone can rove public areas like sidewalks and and have your materials with you, clipboards and things. Again, if you're handing a clipboard back and forth, just like the pens, we should wipe those down. I think it would be fine to draw.
And I just want to also mention, we've set up at the free clinic, places that are public places, that community centers that would love to have your expertise and support in registering, because we're nonpartisan. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, that nonpartisan piece is really great, because we are allowed in places where you can do it. So in Summit County, to do the Metro Parks District, you have to get a permit. That's interesting. So each place is a little bit different. In Columbus, that's not the case. Even if there's a festival going on, the festival providers cannot stop you from walking the area. Yeah, you can acquire the forms to do voter registration. You can get those at your Board of Elections. If you can also print those off at your own house. If you need help with that, you can call the league and we will help you. Is it unacceptable to drop off the forms at a library? There's a chain of custody thing here, and that if you collect the form, you really should get it to the Board of Elections, because there's only 10 days. So let's say you get it and you drop oh, Starbucks is voter registration table friendly. That's interesting. But if you get it and then you take it a couple days later to the library, and then the library takes another 10 days, you're actually in violation of the law. We should, in best practice, just absolutely make sure if you're going to the effort of getting those registration forms or there's absentee applications done, then you need to get it to your Board of Elections. You can get League of Women Voter buttons or hats from your local league. If you do not have a local league and you are a member of the state league, then you can contact us. I will tell you that we don't just hand those out because a lot of groups just want our buttons and then they'll wear it, but they're actually doing something entirely different. They're canvassing for a party or a candidate or to get an issue passed. And so we don't just hand out buttons to the world. You have to either get them through your local league, or if you're doing something for the state, then we need to approve that activity to make sure it really is in line with our partisan guidelines and all of our best practices, and we can get you buttons. So some places have done blue mesh vests and things like that. That's all super cool. Having different ways to make sure that people know who you are is certainly a great idea. Out-of-state registrations, do they go to the Board of Elections in that state? We can't do out-of-state registrations. It's not even the same form. So Ohio has its voter registration form. Every state has different registration forms. So if someone's out of state, you wish them well, you encourage them to do that in their place. You also could decide, as some people are saying, they are not actually collecting, they're not actually interacting with the voters directly, but they might, for example, nursing homes, schools, make sure that locations have voter reg forms and have absentee request forms, and then even come back in a couple days and pick them up and deliver them. But that's a good way to still do it. They have new forms for voter registration and for absentee, no, the voter registration form is the same as it was 4 years ago. Absentee request form has been updated and is more user-friendly. So you should make sure if you're doing absentee request forms, you can do that. Let's see, I think we had some questions that I didn't get to. If someone wants to do their form later, that's fine. I mean, the bottom line though is a lot of times people will forget, they'll spill coffee on it. That's why we try to make it easier.
Jen?
Yep.
I have just a piece of information. This is Marcy in Oberlin. I called this Secretary of State because I sent away from my absentee ballot months ago. And I've been told that they will not mail those until October 6th.
Yeah, they can't by law. So here's the thing, and that's a good point because I think we need to help people. We're telling people to ask for their absentee ballot requests now. And this is part of like, Desiree had a great question about concerns about the Postal Service and things like that. Here's the deal. If you're gonna vote absentee, the earlier you are in the calendar, any delays or concerns you have are going to be addressed. It's those who are getting deeper into the calendar where the boards of elections are busier, where the Postal Service is potentially busier, and where you could get affected by those delays. But by law, no absentee voting cannot start until early voting starts, which is October 6th. So if someone requests their absentee ballot now, they get in the queue, and it's really great. Thank you, Peggy Berry. Let's thank Peggy Berry. Thank you, Nurse Peggy. If you get in the queue now, what that does is boards of elections are moving, they are processing now, and then you'll be in the first group of absentee ballots to go out. Or if there's a problem with your absentee ballot request, they can definitely, it gives you time to fix that, and a lot of people are. If a college student is registered out of state but wants to vote from his or her college address at home, will the state be notified? Potentially. What's more important is just not to have that student vote twice, because even if it's not caught on the front end, it's very likely to get caught on the back end, and then they could be prosecuted, and those kinds of crimes mean they would never be able to vote again. So people are unaware that they can vote in person at their Board of Elections in October. Yeah. So actually it's not always your Board of Elections. There is one early voting location per county. Most counties, that's at your Board of Elections headquarters, but not all. And so part of your job for voter service is to inform folks that early voting is a great option, and inform them where the early voting location is. Also remember though, that early voting, the hours change every day, every week for those 28 days. Can I register someone while speaking with them on the phone? Absolutely not. They have to be there in person and they have to physically sign their form. Which is the same thing. Let's say you see that they forgot to check that they were a citizen and over 18 years old. You can't do that without their permission. That's a moment in time where you could call them and ask them, I believe. Is that right, Jocelyn? I'm like 99% sure. Maybe we should check that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, unless you're doing it online for someone, you know, that's another option.
Yeah, but you can't do it online for others. They really need to do that themselves. That we're putting ourselves into legal risk if we are registering people online for them.
Okay.
Parking for early voting. So if you are concerned about access issues, you should know that we have 40 boards of elections that we've adopted. So we have volunteers who are going to be meeting to ask things like, how's parking? You know, do you have polling locations on election day that don't have parking or don't have access to transit? Do you have any locations that are not ADA accessible? All kinds of things about how is, you know, your absentee ballot process going? Do you need more poll workers? There's all kinds of places where voters fall through the cracks. If you're interested in making sure that you understand how your Board of Elections is operating, you should follow up with myself or Alice after the fact, and we can let you know if your county is covered or not at this point. This presentation will be, we will send you this PowerPoint. In terms of high schools and colleges, we're actually making a curriculum right now for them. So we will have curriculum materials, especially in this new COVID time. We've pulled together some tech experts, several college professors, and some of our volunteer league members, local league members across the state who go into high schools now. So, so we'll have something for that, but the idea of getting this to you is so that if you're training other volunteers to do voter reg, that you have some materials for it. We do have, you know, we are working on recruiting poll workers, and I just got a really good question, but we also do election protection monitors. So the poll workers are obviously working for the Board of Elections inside the polling location to support voters, unless they're running curbside, and maybe they'll be outside for their shifts potentially. Probably they'll flip that back. It probably depends on the polling location, but poll workers work for the Board of Elections. Election protection monitors are nonpartisan election protection monitors that they come from churches, NAACP, league, all over the place. It's a large coalition, and we are positioned outside of polling locations to answer questions that voters have, to record problems, maybe if they're having a lot of machines go down, or there's a particularly cantankerous poll worker who is not being nice to people. You know, those are the kinds of things that we support the voters directly. We record that and deal with any systematic issues.
Hey, Jen, can we also mention 866 Our Vote?
Yeah, I'm getting there.
Okay.
So one thing is make sure you are watching our social media, because we will have a whole bunch on election protection. But if you have a problem or see a problem, please make sure that you are reporting that to 866 Our Vote, because that is how we are tracking these systematic issues. I did just want to mention though, that there could be these poll observers that, and these are deployed to intimidate or question voters when they are attempting to vote. So maybe it's someone who, this is a problem. That's very different than the election protection poll monitors, who are literally there to answer questions for any voter, regardless as to how they look, how they vote, where they live, right? Those are our folks. There could be other folks, there's several different names that they go under, where they might be questioning people of color, they might be questioning someone because they have a disability, they might question someone because English is clearly their second language. That's all about intimidation and suppression, not from the state, but from organizations. If you see that at any place, I want you to please let me know immediately. Let Jocelyn know, let the State League know, call 866-OUR-VOTE. If you see that kind of behavior, that's the kind of thing that we need to know so that we can alert boards of elections, we can alert the Secretary of State, we can assist in any way possible to make sure that voters are not senselessly intimidated. Similarly, if you see misinformation campaigns, so I live in the 12th, or did live in the 12th district, and when we had our special election, a whole bunch of folks in my district were getting text saying that our polling location moved when it had not. That was misinformation designed to confuse voters and reduce turnout. If you see misinformation, again, that's a 5-alarm fire that we need right away. Let's see, can one sign an absentee ballot with more than one signature if he has forgotten how he assigned his voter registration form? Oh, wow. So the signature issue on absentee ballots is a really big one, which is why we have a lawsuit about this, because lots of boards of it's an art form, not a science, to match signatures. Even the world's best experts often make mistakes. And so we do want to be careful about signatures. I don't think you should sign it twice. I think you should call your Board of Elections and try to find out what your signature looks like or what signature they're using. If you have a question about the signature, or you get denied for the signature, please let us know. But that's also another good reason to be asking for your absentee application early, so that if you get denied for a signature mismatch, you can do so. Okay, so the phone number is 866-OUR-VOTE. There we go. Thank you, Catherine Peru, put that in there. I'm trying to see what else. If you see problems or have questions, you can let us know by calling the State League office, by emailing, even just replying to the email you got should go to Alice. I'm actually running office hours. I'm not going to be able to next week, next Tuesday, but from 3 to 5, if you're a local league member or a league member, 3 to 5 every Tuesday, I'm running office hours where I will be just on a Google Hangout, and you can click that. And if I'm with someone, then obviously I'm already with someone, but otherwise you can pick my brain and I can try to help you. So there's a lot of different ways. The voter service chairs, the board president will have that office hours information. And so just make sure, I'm not sending it to all 3,000 of our members, just because you don't know what you're going to get. And this is really about trying to help with voter service. But if you want to get on my office hours, you can ask your voter service chair, you can ask your board president, or again, you can call the State League office. Every Tuesday from 3 to 5, I'm there to help you. And at that, we are at the hour. So I appreciate everyone. This is just the beginning of the conversation. One last question that we got that I think is a good one. There is a group called the Center for Voter Information that is sending out absentee ballots with prepaid postage. Those are fine, except they forgot to highlight the birth date. So they highlighted all the required areas and forgot to highlight the birth date. So that's a problem. Make sure if you're filling that out, you put your birth date in there. If you know someone else who is, that's fine. Have them put their birth date in there. Each county, what signatures they leave on file, talking about signature matching. Sometimes it's a driver's license signature, sometimes it's not. Some counties have multiple signatures on file, some only have one. It's part of our concern with our practices right now. So that's why you could call the Board of Elections and try to find out where the signatures from. They may or may not tell you, but applying early is a good way to go. And if you have problems, again, that's what we're here for. You personally, or you're serving voters in the field and you need help, please let us know. Well, we've had 100 of you on there. Jocelyn, I'm gonna let you say the final goodbyes.
Yep, just thank you so much for all your hard work. We've got a lot to do between now and the election. Please contact us if you need any help. And, you know, let's get out there and make a difference. Take care, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.